Good morning again. Thank you for your patience. We appreciate that very much. Betsy DeVos serves as the 11th U.S. Secretary of Education. For more than 3 decades, she has been on the front line of fight for better and more options for students of all ages. She has already helped expand opportunities for students in 25 states and the District of Columbia. As Secretary, she recognizes that every student is unique and each one needs the freedom to pursue education in ways and places that work for them. Her focus is on expanding education freedom, transforming federal student aid, opening multiple pathways to higher education, and returning power to students, parents, teachers, and local communities. Her leadership has already resulted in expanding 529 educational saving plans, restoring year-round access to Pell Grants, creating new partnerships for apprenticeship opportunities, increasing innovative options for higher education, and pulling back federal overreach by the department. The daughter of a public school teacher, Secretary DeVos received a BA degree from Calvin College and has been married to her husband, Dick DeVos, for 40 years. Together they have 4 children and 8 grandchildren, each one wonderfully unique. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the Secretary of the Department of Education, the Honorable Betsy DeVos.
Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing this morning? I hope you all had wonderful Thanksgivings. I did indeed with part of my family. When you have 4 kids and 3 of them are married, sometimes you have to share with in-law families. I had to get used to doing that, but it's nice to all see you all here today and spend a few minutes with you. I just spoke over at the FSA conference, as you probably know, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the things that I mentioned there, but I want to begin by just reiterating a point which I know has been made previously, but we want to make again, and that is that the success of students at minority-serving institutions is of great interest and import to this administration, to the President, and to myself. And the President and I were so pleased to visit with students and school leaders at the HBCU conference earlier this year, and I know that he would join me in bringing his wishes to you here, great wishes this morning. Some of the things that we've been working on and are doing that are of relevance and import, I think, for your institutions. We have been reviewing, rewriting, and removing onerous regulations that have been impediments to your institutions and your missions, and we're taking a number of steps right now to ensure that you're empowered to implement new ideas that you have. Earlier this year, we went through negotiated rulemaking, and we have proposed rules, regulations out there to do just that. We look forward to hearing from you. If you've not commented on them, we look forward to hearing from you on the proposed rules. Reaching consensus on accreditation reform really was, I think it took the naysayers out of the equation, and it did demonstrate that we can work together in many different ways to really rethink higher education and what it means for students today and students of tomorrow. We know that today there are fewer than 30% of students that would be considered traditional students, graduating high school, going right on to a 4-year college or university, and then graduating in 4 to 6 years. And so with that reality, we have opportunity to think differently about how we serve students, not only in that age range, but students of all ages, because learning and education today really has become and must become a lifelong pursuit. So we know that the work that we've done on accreditation reforms is going to be really important and helpful for you. And we also have been working to ensure that students are protected through meaningful accountability measures, and that new and innovative approaches to education utilizing technology that's available today and being able to integrate that in new ways and to reach students where they are and when they want to be educated. Those are all opportunities that we have to really respond to the reality of the world today. We have the opportunity to provide them with more information, better product, and I know that many of you have been working hard to expand your reach and your partnership opportunities with other institutions perhaps, and many of you with employers. And I do want to encourage all of you, and I have talked with many employers about this as well. I think the reflexive reaction for many over the last number of decades has been for employers to go to their legislators. Well, I think employers should go to educators, and educators should go to employers and talk about ways that you can work together to meet the needs of the students you're serving and to meet the needs that and the opportunities that students will have to be employed in their communities and in their regions. And the places that I've visited that are doing this most intentionally and aggressively are really having some tremendous results. I talked in there a lot about the ways that we are modernizing federal student aid, and you'll hear more about some of the practical tools that we are utilizing. We're introducing an online assist called Aiden that will be able to respond to and answer students' questions directly and not necessitate connecting with a person directly, utilizing artificial intelligence to be able to help students navigate through financial aid process and other questions they have about their higher education. We've also, as you probably learned a couple of weeks ago, expanded the information available to students through the college scorecard. And now students can go to look at individual institutions, and they're both 4-year, 2-year, certificate, apprenticeship, and some graduate programs to look at field of study, what it's going to cost at an institution, and what their likely earning potential is in the first year after they graduate from that particular field of study. We'll be adding more information to that as income information as more of the data accumulates year over year. But this is going to be a really important way for students to be able to make, we think, better informed decisions about their futures by utilizing these tools that will be right at their fingertips. You also know we've updated the FSA form, and in fact, I'm very hopeful that we're going to see even further simplifications. I've been working closely with Senator Alexander. He has long been a champion of simplifying the FAFSA form even further, and we think that there's a real possibility to accomplish that yet this Congress, this session. And so stay tuned for that. But the FAFSA form, as you probably as well know as well, can now be started on any of your devices. It can be continued on any other device, and it can be completed in your smartphone if that's how you choose to do it. So it's become a much more simplified process for students. And while the number of questions is still too long, we're hopeful that that too will soon change. Let's see. There's a lot of additional updates that we are introducing into the experience of federal student aid, from submitting payments to exit counseling to having real-time information on what a student's loan balance is, what if they draw down more, what they are likely to owe and what they're going to owe in the future, and giving them, again, more data and more information to make better decisions about their higher education and their futures. Let's see, what have I not covered here? I think I've covered most of the things that I mentioned over in the other room here. The only other thing is I've made the observation last year and again more extensively this year that federal student aid was it was started in 1965 and started as a guarantor and a lender of last resort. And over the years, as administrations and Congresses have changed, there have been policies that have pulled it back and forth in different directions. And what has resulted for the Federal Student Aid Organization is really a giant mess. There are programs layered upon programs, layered upon programs, and I don't think there was ever really an intention on Congress's part to end up where we are today. And so I have strongly urged that we all have a much more robust conversation about what federal student aid should look like today and in the future, and have argued that we should be considering a standalone organization that is responsive to the student and to the customer and accountable to the president and to Congress and to the taxpayer, but run in a way that is world class. It is the largest consumer lender in the country, and yet it behaves nothing like you would expect of a large consumer lender, and it's not been set up to do that. And so that is something that needs to be addressed, I believe, and this administration looks forward to working with Congress to do just that. So I think at this point, I would just pause and look forward to whatever is on your mind to talk about. But I just do want to end these remarks by saying thank you for what each of you do to serve the students that you represent and to be attentive to the opportunities you're presenting for them and for their futures. You have a great responsibility, and I am very much in admiration of everything that you do to ensure that students are well prepared for what comes next for them. And again, I'm just grateful and thankful for your work. So I will pause, and we can. So Joel, am I going to sit down here?
It's your call. Why don't you do that? That's it.
All right. I am.
Well, I would like you to know that the institutions in this room are doing the heavy lifting in helping our minority people achieve the American dream. And I say it's heavy lifting because the majority of our students that come to our institutions have remedial problems. And at our institution, 70% of the students that come to our college have to go into remedial courses in reading / English and math. But even with those statistics, our institution as a tribal college, as far as educating Indian students for degrees compared to all of the major institutions that educate Indian people, we are in the top 5 with our nursing program, the top 5 with our elementary education. So we are doing a fantastic job. My question to you, what are you going to do to make sure that Title III Part F receives permanent funding by the Congress of the United States? That's my question.
Well, thanks for your question, and I would like to first talk about the reality that you have that many of your students come to you not prepared and in need of remedial work. And this is something that has long been of grave concern to me, and in fact something that I have continued to try to address in my 30-plus years as an advocate for students and individual students. And you know, the reality is that too many kids are stuck in schools in their K-12 years that are simply not the right fit or not working for them. And we've got to change that equation and allow for students to find the right fit for them and for their education. The administration has advanced a proposal called Education Freedom Scholarships, and it would create a federal tax credit pool that would be either that states would choose to participate in or not. And if a state participated, they could take the funds allocated for their state and make it available in the form of scholarships to families and students in K-12 years to find the right fit. And so it would, I believe, create a whole lot of new avenues and approaches for students to be able to learn and to then graduate from high school prepared for what comes next. And you do have a heavy lift in the fact that too many students come through 13 years of formal education and yet are not prepared to do higher education work. We need to change that equation, starting with what we do for K-12 students.
You're part of the majority party in Congress, especially on the Senate side. What are you going to do to get those Republican senators to get this legislation passed so that we can have permanent funding for it?
Well, the administration has been very supportive of and continues to be supportive of funding programs through the Department of Education that have demonstrated to be working for the students they're intended to serve. I fear that we miss the real issue here, and that is that all too many students are coming out of high school not prepared for higher education of any kind. And we simply cannot continue to fund a approach that doesn't work for too many kids. If kids are prepared, you have a different equation on your hands. And that is ultimately got to be our goal. Kids should graduate high school ready for a variety of opportunities, whether it's a career, whether it's a formal higher ed experience, or if it's apprenticeship, or an internship that they can earn and learn at the same apprenticeship, that earning and learning at the same time. There are many different avenues that we should be supporting in much more robust ways. And again, thinking differently about how we approach education for students of all ages.
Thank you very much for being here. Title III, and thank you for your letter to kind of put some of us at rest in terms of how long it would be funded. Having served in the legislative body, I was wondering if you could give us some perspective on where we're going in terms of Title III. I know Senator Alexander has held it up, and I understand what that's like. My federal contacts tell me that he wants to find a quote-unquote permanent funding stream. But of course, sometimes in politics, everything is not what it seems. And of course, I think Title III may be just a part of a bigger picture. So I wanted to know, if you could give us a peek inside of what that discussion is about.
Well, I have worked very closely with Senator Alexander on this issue, and let me just say that stay tuned. Very soon, I think you will hear some, interesting and important approach to addressing the permanent solution there. I am very aware that he has rejected a short-term 1 or 2 year solution. His interest is ensuring a longer-term approach that is going to bring about consistency and predictability and stability. And I am quite confident that he and others in both chambers are committed to doing that as well. And so without laying out a hand that I can't show you right now, please know that I think that there is a good long-term solution that is about to be presented.
Yate Secretary DeVos. Yate National she Kopahan still a shame Bashin Hanati Shadow Zetlanita Shinale. I don't lay down Tulsaholia Navajo Nation. Areo Nasha Condelated Muskogee, Oklahoma, Bacon College, Adenashnish. A co Yate in these United States, the Department of Education, the Department of the State, Department of Interior, originally the Department of War, when all of us indigenous peoples, over 1,000 tribes, indigenous tribes to this continent were here, and these 13 colonies were formed, and all of these different treaties were created to displace, exterminate, terminate, displace tribes all the way westward. in that expansion, the federal government gave funds to these benevolent societies to Christianize the natives, and at the same time took them off their land. And so a lot of their culture, language was decimated. And at that result, 500 plus years up to now, to me, I want to appreciate you for advocating for Native peoples, from those that are yet to be born to those up into their old age. Not just in education. And I think like this tree over here of this symbolic education, the male, female, our families, our language, our culture, our history, those programs that are codified, that are appropriated into our federal programs, that trust relationship, that trust responsibility, that could be continue to be respected, appreciated, and acknowledged, not just in education, for all of our indigenous peoples in these United States. And so for me, I want to advocate for that on behalf of our Indian people, on behalf of our young people. We need to learn our language and our culture. In that regard, those tribal servant institutions, including these tribal colleges, and there are those tribal colleges here representing those tribes, these unique, distinct, sovereign entities. So I want to make note of that. So I want to advocate that those programs in your administration with our president, that not to disrespect our tribal histories, to respect that, to appreciate that, but also not only that, to increase some of those funds for that. So I think as tribes, we're distinct, have a distinct relationship with the federal government under Article 2, that's Section 8. And so specific to that, I want to say that, and I continue to invite you to come to our tribal communities, so that way you can see that impoverished status of our social, cultural, spiritual, economical communities. But at the same time, we're also very rich in our language, culture, and our history. And so I wanted to make mention of that to you in your opening remarks about Thanksgiving. Not just remember Black Friday, not just remember the economy, not just remember Santa Claus, the economics of our society today, but also the social and cultural justice that we need in these United States. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that great reminder. And let me just mention a visit I had to a charter school up in Alaska in August. And it was a charter school specifically organized to resurrect and respect Alaskan cultural heritage and the native population's traditions, language, customs, and it was really a privilege, a joy to visit there and to see some of the students learning words that they may have heard in passing by grandparents or something, but really knowing and understanding more about their roots and their experience. And it's something that I think we continue to advocate more broadly for that opportunity. And again, referencing back to the need for having more freedom to find the right fit for kids' K-12 experience, and allowing for those kinds of opportunities to grow up, I think is a really important next step.
Good morning, Secretary. Thank you very much for being here with us and for giving us some time to talk to you. For centuries, we constructed a higher education system in the United States that worked, at least for everyone who's here. We did our doctorates in the 70s and 90s, so it worked for us. It worked for a lot of people. But as time went on, we started realizing that what has been constructed was not addressing the needs of everyone, especially those for whom we work in minority serving institutions, especially in my case, Hispanic serving institutions, Hispanic serving. And since I came here yesterday, I started hearing a process of deconstructing what has been constructed and looking from a very exciting and diverse perspectives what we have, what we need, and what direction we need to move forward to reconstruct the system. You come here today, you say things that are directly related to that process of reconstructing our educational system, taking into consideration those that were left behind unintentionally or for whatever reasons during the past century. So leaving back to Miami and Puerto Rico tomorrow feeling much more relieved after hearing that you're committed and that you really understand what we work for and what we need in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Madam Secretary. My name is Diane Melby, and I'm the president of Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio, Texas. We have campuses on the Rio Grande Valley and in Houston. Our students come from El Paso. They come from every borderland on the southern part of our country. You started this talk about your grandchildren and your access to your grandchildren. Our children, our students, have grown up in a place where a border is something that they don't relate to. Our students have grandparents, have moms and dads that live in Mexico and across the borderlands. And I just ask that as you consider the regulations of how the Department of Education and how the U.S. government will go forward in taking care of those children that have been brought up in this country, that have strong, strong ties to Mexico, that you keep in mind that those children are our future in this country, and that you support in every way possible that they get educated in the highest level here in the United States.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for your great work.
Madam Secretary, thank you for being here today. And last year in Atlanta, your words certainly provided fuel for me as I went back to my campus and talked about the important work we do as a minority-serving institution. We represent thousands of colleges here, and your programs, Title III, but more particularly for us, Title V means a lot to us and provides certainly resources that we don't have on our campuses and helps us make a difference in terms of accountability and outcomes and getting our students across the finish line. So while what you do may not impact Stanford and Princeton and Harvard and Yale, your words, your support, your advocacy makes a difference for all of our institutions, and I want to thank you for that. Any chance increasing funding for Title V? Because that's something that's made a huge difference in us moving a needle that people said could not be moved. Thank you.
Can you give me some specific examples on how Title V funding has been particularly effective for your institution?
It provided us with the resources to institute something with our Hispanic students in terms of, I call it extreme cohort management, and that was tracking kids. My mother made sure I went to school, but so many of our kids, first-generation college students, don't have that role model or that parent to do that. So we used it for advisors who were going out there and saying, Robert, you missed class. Susan, you didn't do well on that exam. Let's walk you over to the tutoring center. And our extreme cohort management program really changed single-digit graduation rates to double-digit graduation rates and in a remarkable fashion. And those were resources that we couldn't afford on our own.
Good.
Made a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for that great example. Thank you. If I could just, your comments made me sort of segue to one thing that I didn't mention and that I hope you're all aware of, and that is our experimental site and pilot program for federal student aid for students to be able to work in institutions and businesses relevant to their field of study and their interests. And I hope that this is something that you will all look at and embrace in a major way, because I think this will be very meaningful for students who can get some practical, relevant experience in areas that they think they want to go and work, but this will give them an opportunity to see firsthand whether that is the case.
You asked for an example. Let me give you one from my institution. We are a non-for-profit private institution. We don't get any subsidies from the government. So we have a break-even budget, and we can function with what we have for what is needed now. But to develop a full platform for digital learning environments, to bring in new personnel to do instructional designing, we don't have those monies. Title V can make you have that in 3 years, and it pushes you to the next level just by this type of just one example.
Good. No, thank you.
There are
Thank you
many
for that.
other examples.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We appreciate you being here with us. My name is Cynthia Lindquist. I'm president of Chandeska Chistana Community College up in Fort Totten, North Dakota. And we have met once before when AHEC came to your office. But thank you for your advocacy and support for education in general, particularly on the K-12 side for the charter schools, because I think it is making a difference in that. But I want to mention, please help us to expand TRIO, Talent Search, Upward Bound, Student Support Services. There are 37 tribal colleges and universities, and over the years, I've been a president for 17 years. Over the years, we have seen a decrease and a diminishment of those programs at our institutions, and I believe out of the 37, I think only 7 of us have one of those programs, or maybe 2 of those. My college, fortunately, has both Talent Search and Student Support Services. I don't have the funding and resources to have all the advising, all the counseling I need, and so those programs become the mainstay of all those other support things that my students need. You know, so if it's remediation, if it's life skills, if it's financial planning, if it's career counseling, all of that, those programs help me to do that. And I know probably all of these institutions sitting in this room before you today, we could all probably use a talent search program, a student support service program, and or Upward Bound to help provide those, and it's not additional support, it's just really common sense support to help our students really, really complete, succeed, and get to those outcomes that we're all striving for.
Good. Thanks. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much for those questions and your comments. And would you please join me again in thanking Secretary DeVos for her presence?
Thank you all.
Okay, we're going to go right into our next compliance session here. If you would bear with us, we're got some momentum going, and we'll continue. The compliance sessions that we'll be doing now are geared toward the audit and compliance process. I'm going to ask our team of presenters if they would please come up. Dr. Marcia Board, Mr. Raul Galvin, and Ms. Ingrid Valentine. If you guys would come on up, and we'll get started immediately with that session, okay? I'll let you do it. Why not? Okay, thank you. So we're pleased to have a distinguished panel of individuals who will be coming to us now to talk about some compliance, Title IV compliance, and strategies for success. We have joining us today Dr. Marcia Boyd, who serves as the director of the Minority Serving and Under-Resourced School Division team with the Federal Student Aid. Many of you have perhaps worked already previously with Dr. Boyd and her team on issues at your campuses around Title IV compliance. And let me say that Dr. Boyd's team is one that comes, as we often say to people, this is a team that only comes at the invitation of the institution. Our compliance team, which you'll hear from in a few moments also, sometimes they don't necessarily wait on you to invite them. They sometimes invite themselves. But we have a combination of that you're going to hear from this morning. You're going to hear from the Minority Serving in Under-Resourced School Division team, which is said that Dr. Boyd leads, that works proactively with your institutions at your invitation to come in and address issues before they become major issues and deserving of more detailed compliance attention. We're also honored to have Ms. Ingrid Valentine, who is serving as the Interim Chief Compliance Officer for Federal Student Aid. And as I said earlier, we're all nice folks. There's no good people and bad people. We all wear white hats, okay? There are no black hats, white hat folks here. Ingrid will be coming and we'll be talking, he's going, yeah, kidding. Ingrid will be coming and sharing with us from the compliance team perspective as well, some things that you should be aware of as senior officials on your campuses and at your institutions. And then Mr. Raul Galvin, who is a member of the Minority Serving Under-Resourced School Division team that many of you perhaps have also had the opportunity to interact with, will be coming to talk about those particular issues as well. So please join me in welcoming this team, and I believe, who's coming up? Is it Ms. Valentine? Sure. And so we'll click the button here, and ta-da, and there we go. In terms of, I did that pretty good, didn't I? Okay, cool. Thank you. Please welcome Ingrid Valentine.
Hi, guys. Thank you. Are we dimming the lights, or are we just going to keep them?
We're gonna dim them.
Yeah, so you could see it just a little bit better.
You can get a better view of the lights, and that way we could, if something gets thrown this way, we'll sit.
We're ducking. Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me here today. As Joel pointed out, I am here with my esteemed colleagues, Marcia and Raul, and who you know them a little bit better. Again, my name is Ingrid Valentine. I'm the interim director for compliance with FSA. So today we're going to kick it off and we're going to talk about a few things. Oh, I'm supposed to drive. Sorry. All right, I'm driving and talking. So we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about why Title IV compliance matters to you. We're going to talk about a successful compliance program reviews, and basically to end it all up, we're going to make you really, really prepared for anything that comes your way as far as Title IV compliance is concerned. We're going to take this session at a high-level perspective. I'm going to give you, and Raul, we're going to give you some basic information. We're going to come back with some case studies that is going to be presented by Marcia, but most importantly, we're looking for your involvement in this, okay? Speaking of involvement, we're going to ask you to take 5 minutes, and you want to discuss amongst your tables, because that's going to be your collective group for today. And if your table's not big enough with people, or you want to just get to know your neighbors, you can combine conversations with your neighbors. But think about for 5 minutes why compliance matters to you. All right? So we are going to take 5 minutes to do that. All right. Is there a timer that I'm supposed to use?
I'll be your timer.
It'll be your timer. Raul's going to be your timer. So this is the time to get to know each other. This is our warm-up exercise, everybody. Oh, it's on. Joel just gave me a timer. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have to rely on Raul. Well, you guys are good. You don't even need any hints. You are right into it. Oh, this is going to be a good group. So excited. And I've had 2 cups of coffee, you guys, so, okay? Just want to let you know, I may come down and start talking to you, all right? And that's a scary thing. That's, well, I'm going to come down and talk to them. Oh, my God. table back there is ready to go. So, but I'll give you maybe another minute to talk. A little bit. Hey, Joel, how do I turn this timer off? Is it going to beep or something? Oh, okay, I can keep going. So let's start with my table right there who said they got this together, and let's hear a couple reasons why compliance matters to you guys. Anybody, just shout it out.
Okay, no money, no mission.
Right. Woohoo! That's number one. Right. If you're not in compliance, there's no money, no mission. Anybody else? Why is it important? Why does compliance matter to you guys? Say that one more time. I didn't hear it. Something about transparency.
Of transparency and trust for our students as we are strongly trying to be student-centered. It gives that
Right.
compliance, gives us those checks and balances
Correct.
that protects the student as well as the institution.
Great. Good stuff. Anybody else want to share today? Uh-huh.
To expand on that comment, really in the end, it helps ensure that our students are well cared for and well served.
Exactly. And that's what we're here to do, right? We're just to make sure that those students are well cared for and that the parents are well cared for, the parents of those students, and you guys are well cared for. Compliance makes your jobs easier. If you guys stay in compliance, you guys get to go home early every day, right? Right? You don't have to stay after work and deal with all that stuff. Anybody else want to share before we move on?
I just happened to be asked to share some comments here when I stepped out of the room here.
Okay.
So if you want to be in the center of attention, make sure you're not included or part of the discussion to begin with. But they got some notes here: stay out of jail, accountability, ensure continued funding, awareness, protect our institutions, and best practices.
You guys are ahead of the game. Those are some slides that are coming up. So you guys are really on top of this. Anybody else want to share? Larry, you good? Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And this is a saying by Friedrich Nietzsche, who is a famous German philosopher. And he obviously said, you have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. But that's kind of a misnomer for people in compliance. There is a right way to do things, all right? I just want you to know that. There's a right way. Stay in compliance. But today I want you guys to just keep an open mind about what's happening. I want you to do what you just did. We want you to share. We want you to communicate. We want you to talk to each other, get some best practices out there, and just make sure that you guys just feed off of each other a little bit. Talk about those things, all right? Like I said, we're going to use case studies a lot to help you bring back some of the ideas that Raul and I will talk about. Marcia's in charge of that. And before we get started with our first case study, I want to give you some ideas. And again, this is probably some of the things that you just talked about. Benefits of staying in compliance. Number one on the list is if you stay in compliant, your institution retains its eligibility to participate in Title IV programs. I think we've talked about that, right? That means you keep going with your Title IV programs, right? Stay in compliance, easy thing to do. Number two, you avoid actions requiring monetary resolutions that could result in impacting the financial health of your institutions, such as liabilities and fines, all right? Staying in compliance means you don't owe us money because you did something you weren't supposed to do, right? You don't want to give up that money. You guys work really hard to keep that money and to bring those dollars in. You want to maintain it. Number three on the list is you maintain access to funds without restrictions, all right? That means that the money that you get and you draw down, if you stay in compliance, it stays there. It's easy accessible to you. There's no restrictions on it. And again, some of this will make sense later for you new folks to this. It'll make sense more as we talk about our case studies. Benefit number four, you avoid the additional financial requirements in order to continue to participate, such as a letter of credit. We'll talk about letters of credit later, right, and what those things mean. But again, those are things you want to avoid. Again, we're keeping this at high level. We don't want you guys in the presidential or the presidents out here to get down into the weeds of this. I want you guys to just remember some of these things when you go back to your campuses and you talk to your financial aid people and you say, oh, hey, I remember that. We talked about that in that Title IV compliance session. Your financial aid person is going to go, oh my God, you went to one of those sessions? Just leave us alone. Let me do my thing. So, but just remember these terms, okay? We want to kind of keep you at a high level. Where was I? Number 5, you avoid restrictions placed on your institution's participation, such as the ability to add new programs and locations. So if you get in trouble with compliance, we can sometimes come in and say, hey, you know what, hold up on adding that new program or that additional location, all right? You don't want to be in that position. You want to have the freedom to do that, right? So stay in compliance, you'll keep that freedom. And finally, number 6, you avoid the administrative burden associated with having to conduct file reviews and respond to deficient audits and our ever-popular program review, which we'll talk about later. So up next, I think, is Marcia. She's going to give us our first case study about Apple Blossom University. And remember, this involves your participation. So I'm going to let Marcia take it away.
Thanks, Ingrid. Good morning. It's almost afternoon at home, or it is afternoon at home, I guess. This is a long trip out here. Before I introduce the case study, I want to introduce some folks that are in the room. They are important to this process, been very instrumental in this program. Our deputy is here, Ms. Robin Miner. Robin, you wave your hand, stand up. Our supervisor, Ms. Katrina Turner, is here. If you stand up and wave your hand. I have some members of my staff that are here. Mr. James McMillan, Mr. Larry Eady, Mr. Larry Coles. I think Gwendolyn is here. Is she in here? She was probably out helping you to register. Some of these folks will be here, and as you know, Raul is part of our team as well. Will come out to your institutions and work with you directly. And so I'm going to start by introducing this case study, Apple Blossom College case study. I promise you I didn't name this Apple Blossom. But it says, you are the college provost and have been selected to lead the institution as an interim president based on experience and knowledge of the university. In your new position, you are concerned the school might have some issues with Title IV compliance. So everyone has a piece of paper in front of them. I want you to write this telephone number down. 202-570-0139. I'm going to give it to you again. 202-570-0139. That is my telephone number. If you think that you have some Title IV compliance issues, please call me, okay? Before Ingrid call you. And you definitely don't want Robin to call you. Okay, but please do call me. Okay, am I hitting enter or? Down arrow? Okay. Okay. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Apple Blossom College. It's a rural college. It has 700 students. The school experienced an enrollment decline the past 5 years and went from 1,100 students to the current 700. The ideal enrollment is 1,200. How many of you have, what would you do if you lost 400 students? Reduction of staff? What are some of the other things that happens when you have an enrollment loss of such a substantial amount? Because let's just say your total in cost is $20,000, okay? That's 20,000 times 400. Where do you, how do you replace that? So we have to pay attention to enrollment, right? Okay, the ideal enrollment is 1,200 students. The president you replaced retired after 20 years. And at the same time, the CFO and the entire IT staff also resigned to pursue other professional opportunities. How bad could it be, right? So two of the most important positions on the campus are now gone, or are vacant, right? So I just want to give you a little bit of information that sets this stage. 2 decades ago, the average age of the college and university presidents was 52. Today, it is 61. They say 61.7, but I don't know out of it. Yeah, you know. So in fact, in 1986, just 13% of presidents were over the age of 60. In 2011, 58% of presidents are over 60. What's the retirement age? 66, right? So if we're already at 61, how many more years before you can get full retirement? 66 in 6 months, right? Now, then we have to talk about what's the average span of a college tenure, president's tenure. What's the average college president tenure? 3.5. That's scary, right? It used to be 8.5. Okay. But with presidents, they have a saying, ACE, for college presidents, 70 is the new 50. You know, so we have to pay attention to these trends, right? When the president leaves, the CFO leaves, and then you have an entire IT staff leave, I hope you have a plan in place. Because you can't just give up, right? The students are still coming. To add on to that, the former financial aid director and half the staff members were dismissed as a result of numerous audit findings. Most of these were repeat findings with substantial monetary fines assessed. What's the worst thing you could have is a repeat finding, right? Because what a repeat finding means is that you had a finding, then you came up with a corrective plan or action. You told us what the corrective plan and action was, and then you didn't follow through on your corrective action plan. That's the only way you could have a repeat finding, okay? So now you have your former financial aid director is also gone, okay? Apple Blossom is a problem. The recent audit cited Apple Blossom College lack of administrative capability. That's one of the worst findings you can get from us. The initial finding indicates the school will need to return $1.5 million to the U.S. Department of Education. How many of you could just write us a check for $1.5 million without it being a problem? Somebody said, do we take debit cards? Okay. So based on the knowledge, based on all of these facts about Apple Blossom, what are some of the potential Title IV compliance issues, and what are some of the problems that you will incur as this new interim president coming on board? And then after you've talked about it and identified some of the issues, then we'll talk about it together. So we'll give you about 2 minutes together just to discuss some of the issues. You want a small piece. Yeah, just, all you're doing is reading. Okay.
You want to do something?
Okay, okay, you, or I can do the cost management. Okay, and I'll do the case study. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So this college, what we tried to show you here is basically the worst case scenario for a college or university. This college is losing enrollment. They have problems with, they have audit findings. They have senior management that have left the institution. This is kind of the worst case scenario. So tell me some of the things that you thought about when you read this and heard this, starting with this table.
So governance is the first thing. I mean, you've got to address the leadership vacuum that's there in a lot of critical areas because obviously you won't be able to sustain whatever the solutions are if you don't have leadership in place and oversee the operations and whatever the remediation plan is to be able to see that to the end. So that's one of the biggest things that need to be addressed right away, probably simultaneously with trying to figure out why you didn't comply with the original remediation plan and what barriers are in place that you need to remove in order to ensure long-term compliance.
One of the things that we always encourage is a succession plan. How many of you actually have succession plans on your campuses? Okay, good. And that's not just for the senior leadership, but that would be for your financial aid director. That would be for your registrar. That would be for your admission director. Someone has to replace these folks, especially if they're in a retirement age. You want to make sure that they're being trained properly, that there is a succession plan. So we recommend that you have a succession plan in writing should something like this occur, okay? Funding. When you have an enrollment decline, it impacts your funding. It impacts whether or not you can hire new staff, whether you can build buildings, whether you can take care of deferred maintenance, things of that nature. So you want to make sure that you understand and you're receiving. How many of you receive daily reports on your enrollment? Okay, good. It has to be some type of predictive approach with regard to your funding, in regards to enrollment. And when you start to see an enrollment decline each year, then you have to change your methodology. You have to change what you're actually doing. So succession plans are important, paying attention to the funding with regard to enrollment. If you have an enrollment manager, that person should be in your office on at least a weekly basis, giving you reports with regard to your enrollment. But then we talk about the financial aid director and half of the staff that was dismissed. And you talked about governance and understanding why that there's a repeat finding. Well, let me hear from some of the other tables. How about this table over here? Like, you have a financial aid director, you have repeat findings. What would be your concerns there?
The concern is how the financial aid director stayed in the position without some kind of reprimand or corrective action after the first finding. Because the first finding is the first shot at the bow. That's a message. And the scary thing about this is it's not an unreal story. Probably more minority-serving institutions are facing with this kind of scenario than we care to say out loud.
Well, we're not advocating firing folks. But what we are saying is that when you have audit findings, you have to pay attention to those. Yeah, yeah. So the corrective action that, because the bottom line is, as a president, you're responsible for Title IV. Ultimately, the president is responsible for Title IV, the Title IV program, okay? It is not the financial aid director. It is not your enrollment manager. It is not your CFO. It is the president. So if something goes on, the first person that we're going to contact is, in fact, the president of the institution, okay? So the president, when you receive the report with regard to any audit findings or things of that nature, you want to know exactly how is it going to be resolved, okay? And you need to make sure that they are following through on it, because if you see a repeat finding on your audit, you know that your staff did not do what they said they were going to do, okay? So how can you avoid this? You have to have policies and procedures in place, right? Policies and procedures, they are your roadmap to ensuring that you do not have audit findings, okay? For every program we have rules and regulations that govern those programs. So make sure that your staff know the rules and regulations that govern those programs. So how do we go about doing that? Are they here for the training that we provide? How many of you have folks here at the FSA conference? Okay. This is where all the information, they can pose questions, they have the ability to learn about new rules and regulations that govern these programs, but they have to come to training sessions. And you cannot tell us you don't have the money. You know why? Why can't you tell us that? Administrative cost allowance. We've provided you with administrative cost allowance, so therefore you can't tell us you can't send an employee here. Okay? So with these recent sightings and potential monetary, that comes out of where? Out of your budget. A $1.5 million liability will come out of your budget. That's money we've given you, and now you got to give it back to us because you made errors. Not because the money, technically, probably if you did it right, you would have kept that $1.5 million. But because it wasn't handled correctly, now you got to give it back to us. Raise your hand if you could just write us a check for $1.5 million and it would not hurt your budget.
I could write it, you might not be able to cash it.
Okay. So now you're serving as the interim president and the financial aid director. You've hired a new one with 2 years of Title IV experience, but no managerial experience, okay? The new director is unable to attend any financial aid conferences because you need him or her on campus with you at all times, okay? The new director and the 2 remaining staff members struggle to keep up with the demands of the job. The staff is not trained on new rules and regulations that govern Title IV, resulting in more audit findings. Okay. Based on what you know now, what are some of the potential issues that you may face? Now we have the previous audit findings, we got new audit findings. You have a financial aid director that doesn't have any managerial experience. So that means that you have a staff, and she's never directed a staff before. Let me just say this to you as well. There's over 5,000 people here for this conference, but not all trained financial aid administrators that can lead an office. Okay? If you have a good financial aid administrator, try to keep him or her. Because they are hard to find. And unlike my generation, when we came into the financial aid and the way we were trained, we stayed there till midnight, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning until we got the job done. This generation that we're training up now are not going to do that. They have to get to the gym, they have to get to wherever, but they are not staying there. So if you have a good financial aid officer, try to keep them. Okay? So now talk among yourselves for just 2 minutes about just some of the things we talked about. Additional audit findings. What do you think happens at the department level once we see new audit findings? You had the others that you didn't take care of. Now you got some new ones. What do you think is going to happen? I'll let you talk amongst yourself, and we'll determine whether you get the right answer or not. Okay, so now that you know a little bit more about Apple Blossom College, the table back here, what are some of your thoughts about Apple Blossom?
Not the exact same thing, but we had an issue years ago when I first became president and financial aid director. Small institution, we only had one financial person. So that person was not. So we ended up contracting from another institution that we knew had a strong financial aid program to help us come and find what we needed to do. And when we first found out what we were dealing with, and when the team came in to help us out, we discovered more stuff. And again, the office at the Department of Education, we called them right away, and they helped us through the process. But for us, hiring a contractor to come in and help us out was the best thing that we could have done.
There are contractors, third-party services that come in and will help you and assist you with your Title IV program. Just make sure that they are a reputable company. But before you do that, call me. Okay, call me. How many of you have had a visit from the MSERS team, if you don't mind raising your hand? Okay. We didn't hurt you, did we? Okay. Yes. Yes, sir.
I kind of know about that Apple Blossom College just a little bit. That's kind of like part of my story, you know, coming over into Bacone College, an 1880 school, and laid off everybody, had 700 students and more athletic programs and academic programs and outsourced financial aid, and really laid everybody out before I got there. But, you know, no fear. No fear and a lot of faith and a lot of prayers and a lot of support from USDOE, Cynthia Thornton. Give us some guidance. And good old John Gritz, you know.
Yes.
Good old John Gritz. He's one of our alums, you know. So say, hey, brother, you got to help us out. You know, try to reach out to some of our tribal leadership. A lot of folks left. You know, HLC came in too, and put a ear tag on us. And then we went from HCM1 to HCM2, and that's tough sledding there.
It is tough.
And so we're trying to make our way out of there. That water faucet that was running pretty good got cut off, and so going through the whole process of hard copy and verification and rebuilding is kind of like rebuilding on quicksand, and bringing in a financial aid person or bringing in somebody that could step in there. And so I know that story. It's like going through the eye of the storm, and especially in Oklahoma, you know. And so, but there's a way out.
There is a way out.
There's a way out. And so the technical support, and so as we move forward, you know, I mean, there are human errors.
Yes.
And it goes from the governance all the way to the governance. And I know you say the president's the responsible party, but at some point your board is the chartered entity and the legal fiduciary stewards of that institution. So board members, besides just showing up at meetings, needed to be more engaged and not just meet twice a year, but at least every other month. So there was a whole rebuilding of our college, and it's taken some time. But I know that USDOE, you know, I know we kind of put a lot of blame on you on what happened to us Indian people. You know, the takings of our land and everything else. You know, treaty rights, and that's my story.
Right.
You know, tried to say, hey, well, help us out. And your visitors came over here on your program review, and that was my story to them. But nevertheless, the technical assistance, the understanding, empathy, and then our movement towards becoming a tribal college because of our students, our American Indian students. You know, there's that trust responsibility between the United States government and Native American tribes, federally recognized Indian tribes, and those students. So there's a way out. I know throughout this country, a lot of these private colleges are closing. They don't have that mission to educate Indians. And so for us, I know the USDOE has been supportive. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the things about Apple Blossom College that speaks volumes is that if you don't reach out for help, you just keep getting further and further into more problems exist. Once you start having a lot of audit findings, it sends up red flags to us, okay? The compliance directors will call me from the different regions, say, are you aware that so-and-so, this is happening at this institution? I'll reach out to my team leads that lead that school and say, are you aware? And then we reach out to the institution. We're not here to hurt, but to help. Okay, so if I call you and I said, I'd like to come and visit, let me come. Let me come and visit. Let us come to visit, because we're seeing something, the same thing that Ingrid's staff is seeing, we're seeing it as well. As a matter of fact, we identify it on an annual basis, and we don't make as many trips as we would like. We probably do about 25 to 30 visits to schools each year. So if you get on that list, let us come, because it can only thing it can do is help you, right? So one of the things that, you know, I made a couple of notes as I was reading through this case study. Some of the things that I would strongly suggest you look at is your staffing in the financial aid office. You have a director, yes, but who's next? Who's the next person in line outside of the director? Can you have a conversation with that person just like you can have with the director? If the director leaves you, would you have another person that stepped up to the plate and could take over that office? And if not, you do need a third-party service and telephone number that you could bring in temporarily until you can identify a financial aid administrator, okay? The other thing, organizational structure is big on my plate. Make sure you're structured in such a way that you're getting reports. You're receiving the person that's above the financial aid office. They know something about financial aid. Oftentimes, we put people above the financial aid office, and they know absolutely nothing about Title IV and financial aid. But just to put them underneath, you know, have a reporting structure. Make sure that person knows something about financial aid, okay? Then some of the other things that I want to just make mention about. Policies and procedures are extremely important. Although you have a financial aid office, financial aid is a process. Everyone on the campus is responsible for Title IV. Okay? The faculty, although they don't want to, they have a role. They must ensure attendance in the beginning of the semester, right? How many of you have a mechanism to determine that a student attended a class before your census date? If you don't, you should, because it is a requirement, one of our requirements, okay? Budget and finance. You have to budget for training. You have to make sure that your staff is actually able to attend training sessions. I haven't been in the financial aid office since 2009, but I know the rules and regulations that govern it. And I go through a training session every year. I don't have to, but I do, because I want to stay up on top of the rules and regulations. The financial aid director, she needs or he needs to stay up on top of the rules and regulations as well. We have what is called fundamentals training, okay? Your entire staff should have gone through the fundamentals training. Okay. Customer service. We monitor the media. We monitor student complaints. So when we start seeing a lot of student complaints come from a certain institution, that's when I get on the phone with the president trying to figure out what's actually going on. We don't ignore that. You know, when students are complaining to us, we have a complaint system that can go around you and come directly to us. And then we have to find out why this student is complaining, okay? Now, I know some of you said that you get reports regarding your enrollment. How many of you are getting reports from financial aid on a weekly basis? I need more hands to go up. Because this report is so important to you. This is where the complaints come from, right? For the majority of the time, when students are not getting their credit balances on time or they're not being processed on time. So make sure you're getting reports. And the report should be something like this. You received X amount of ISERs in, how many have been processed, how many have not been processed, and why haven't they been processed? Okay. The registrar. The registrar, how many of you are getting reports from the registrar? Okay. You should get a report from the registrar on a weekly basis. How many students are enrolled, right? How many students withdrew? Why are they withdrawing? Okay. Because depending on when they withdraw, you might have to send money back to us. Okay. Your business office, they should be telling you how many refunds, as you call them, we call them credit balances, have you distributed, and when? Do you have a financial aid business office calendar? If you don't, you should have your financial aid officer and your business officer develop a combined calendar so that you know exactly when things take place. IT, campus security, academics, student success, counseling services. All of these reports should be coming to you on at least a weekly basis. So those are just some of the elements that I would like you to consider. So here's what happens if we come on campus. One of the first things we want to see is your policies and procedures manual. One of the first things that Ingrid and her staff will want to see and require is a policies and procedures manual. Okay? So make sure you have a written policies and procedures manual in the financial aid office and that it's updated. There was one school I went to, I had to actually blow the dust off of it. It was so old and outdated. The lady that was on there as the director, she had retired like 10 years ago. So make sure it's updated on an annual basis. Okay. And although this is just this is kind of the worst case scenario. But this leads to institutions closing. Because if you've never been on HCM2, and this is one of the areas that Ingrid will talk about, it's a very difficult process for some institutions. And so we have to safeguard federal funds for you as taxpayers, and we have to ensure that the students are being treated properly. So again, if I call you, call me back. If I don't get you, call me back. Because there's something that's going on, I need to get a hold of you. So make sure you call me back. But if you don't call me back, I'm going to keep calling you until you do call me back. But then when I say I need to come and visit you, let me come visit, because there's some things that we gotta talk about and we gotta help you resolve. Okay? Okay, I think I'm done. Oh no, I got some more for this apple blossom.
Keeps getting better.
They implemented a new student information system. How many of you during your tenure have ever implemented a new student information system? Did it work like a charm? What happens typically with the student information systems, you know, in my experience going on campuses, is that very few staff members are trained properly with the new information. You have one guru, and that guru is running all around the campus trying to help folks. But for the most part, many of the staff members are not trained properly, so things fall through the cracks. The faculty is inconsistent about submitting attendance forms. And also, credit balances are disseminated late. And in some cases, not at all. Big no-no. Okay, one of the things that we frown upon is students not receiving what they're due, okay? Because the money come in, that's their money. They're just paying you the charges that they owe for the courses or the rooms, whatever the case may be. But the rest of that money, that belongs to the students. So you can't meet payroll with their money and give them their money later, okay? You cannot do that. You have to pay the student first. This is what I was talking about with faculty. Faculty have, many faculty members that I have spoken with, that's not our responsibility. It is their responsibility to take attendance before your census day. Because before you could disperse any funds to a student, you have to verify they attended at least one of those classes. And the only way you could do it is through the faculty, correct? Okay. Your cohort default rate was issued in September, and the college is now over 30% for the second year in a row. What happens in the third year if it's over 30? Anybody knows what happened in the third year if it's over 30%? You lose eligibility. Okay? And then the new financial aid director just quit with no notice. I was on a campus, and I kid you not, I was on a campus. I had some questions for the new financial aid director. And we were waiting for him in a meeting the next day, and he never showed back up. He was in the HR office resigning. I'm looking at the president looking at me. I only had 2 questions for him, you know. So now what?
Look for another job than trying to figure this one out.
This is the new president, and this is an actual situation.
That's what I'm saying. It's not working.
This is an actual situation. This is an actual situation here where the new financial aid director and the new president and the new financial aid director quit without notice. Seriously, this actually happened. No, some of them from different scenarios, but this last part is actually what happened. Yes, Isaac.
I just think, you know, from listening to the situation, I talk loud, I wish the microphone line.
Okay.
I used to be a middle school teacher, so I talk real loud. But one of the things I learned from experience, call on the leadership, call on the Department of Education, and work with the Department of Education to come up with a game plan, because that's what's going to save you in the long run. And in doing that game plan, bring the right people to the table to develop that game plan. You need to bring IT to the table, the business office to the table. Definitely whoever's left in financial aid needs to come to the table. And really, I mean, work with those people to come up, what are we going to do to get this situation right? And constantly report back to the Department of Ed the progress of that game plan and how you're making those corrections, and that'll keep you out of trouble with compliance.
I wholeheartedly agree. Any other suggestions for Apple Blossom College? Yes, sir.
You talked about the the ERP system, and some of us in this room have gone through those transitions. We actually, at our college, we started a consortium of like-minded schools and that actually had the same ERP, the enterprise system, and we've actually entered into a formal agreement with about 6 or 7 colleges, and that can be very, very helpful and very, very useful if you have support from other colleges that have the same enterprise system that you do, because you can, not only that registrar can work with registrars from other schools that are going through similar situations, financial aid directors, et cetera. So, I mean, I would recommend having some kind of a partnership with other schools that have similar enterprise systems that you do. That can be very helpful. It certainly has for us with our consortium.
I appreciate those comments, and I would agree. One of the things that the tribal colleges and universities do very well is that if there is something that's beneficial to one college, they will share it. Okay? And so I think it's really important, especially in IT, that you have the ability to contact your neighboring institution, or as we call them, sister institutions, where you can get some advice and some help. But call us. Don't be afraid to call us. As these situations happen, I'm telling you, people leave every day. You know? And the good thing about the MSERS team, most of them are former financial aid directors. Okay? So it's not like we have not seen it before. And I'm saying call us, but then call your colleagues as well to get some assistance. You might need an IT staff person that knows Banner, and you have your colleague over here that could send someone over to help you and assist, okay? What are some of the other things that you would help? Back here, well, right here. I haven't talked to you yet. What are some of the things that you would, no, right here, this table right here that's looking around. Yes. What are some of the things you would, some of the things that you would do to help Apple Blossom College?
So one of the first things, and I think a couple of persons have mentioned that, is I would rely on the resources of my sister institutions. I was just sharing that one of my utopian type views of higher ed and minority serving institutions in particular. We have to develop a cadre of extremely talented staff and use that across institutions. Of course, you have to have some rules around that, so no stealing from each other. But we all fund this group, and we all use that group to be able to provide some of those interim type services. It's similar to what other companies do for us. But why couldn't we develop that for ourselves? We know who our experts are. We know where they are, and why not lend a hand when that's what's needed here? Because you could need that in other areas sometimes. But I think that the main thing is to get that collaboration, use those resources, and then we're better positioned to let you know what we need.
Okay.
I think the other thing we discussed here was personnel training.
Mm-hmm.
That is more of a preventive measure that prevents Apple Bottom showing up on your campuses. Really making certain that the training goes from not just the top person in the financial aid office, but it goes down through the staff, so it can help to minimize the number of mistakes to keep you from compliance issues. I think exercising all types of training modes to make that happen.
Training is critical. It is extremely critical from your frontline staff all the way up to the director. The director is great, but you have to train the frontline people as well. So, yes, ma'am.
One thing I would add is, and I think we've said it, but it doesn't hurt to really drill it down, is the pressure from your operation. Having had that happen and having MSUSRD come to campus and do like an internal audit that's not threatening is invaluable. Because you look at yourself and you think you know how you're fixing it, but when someone who's a professional comes in from the outside and looks at you, it's a very different moment. And audits, we're fearful of that, but can be unveiled to you or shown to you, and your people hear it differently than you saying it. So if the experts come in and give you feedback on where
So the first day that we come on campus, people are looking at us, and they got the mean scowls on their face. By the second day, they're like, Marcia, let me talk to you for a minute. And by that time, we've broken the ice, and we get down to really what's happening, and then we can help you. Okay, so the first day is kind of icebreaker. You got to learn, you got to trust each other. But we're not going to do anything to hurt you. Our visits are non-punitive. Now, I can't say that about Ingrid. But our visits are non-punitive. So when we come in, we're trying to help you fix it should her group decide they need to come in and do a program review. Okay? Because at a certain point, all schools have to go through a program review, I'm sure. So before they come, we want to prepare you, get you prepared, and say, these are the things that you need to fix. And if you fix these, you won't, she comes in. Now we have schools that we've been to, they talk about a program review. They say, come on, we're ready. We're ready. Yes, ma'am.
I was president of Apple Blossom University. What people say presidents don't need to do and get down in the weeds.
Yes.
Because this would be my number one of my high priorities. Because after you've had all these repeat findings and you're about to potentially lose Title IV funding, you're out of it. So that has to be a top priority.
Yes.
And not only in terms of getting reports regularly, but being there and talking with, finding out what's going on in the financial aid.
I appreciate that. And most of you are in the weeds. When I go onto your campuses, you know the staff, you know students, and I go onto campuses, and I was walking across the campus to the dining hall with the president, and it took us like 30 minutes to get across this campus, and we were only like maybe 2 blocks away. But the staff stopped the president, the students, he stopped to talk to them. And so you are in the weeds, but it's nothing better than someone prepared. You don't want to be in a situation where you say, I didn't know this was going on. You have to be prepared. And so we try to prepare you. And the best way to be prepared is to be knowledgeable and have things in writing and hold people accountable for these programs so that you can continue to be a part of the program. Okay? Because once, you have to do a letter of credit and HCM2 and HCM1, we're going down the wrong path. Okay? And so hopefully this has been helpful. We laugh and joke, but, a lot of these situations are really real, and we see them a lot. And we want to make sure that the staff on your campuses know that they can also reach out to us, okay, and call us. And if they find something that they don't understand or need help with, we'll help them. That's why I gave you my phone number, because if you need my help, I'll be there to help you, okay? All right, so we're going to go to our next area, and that's where we're going to talk about program review findings.
Good morning. Buenos dias. So, first, a couple of things. I work with MSERTS, Minority Serving Under Resourced Schools Division, and Ingrid, in case you hear somebody tell you that Raul said that compliance is the bad guys, I do say that during my sessions, only to get their attention, to let them know we're here to help. Okay, so part of my training is to, and believe me, the Dallas team is the best team ever. I live in Dallas, and they are my friends, and we talk all the time. So we're here to help you. Just a couple of things from what Blossom College, or Apple Blossom. There are some serious issues going on with that school. Understood, right? I think we all understand that. When we talk about repeat findings, that is serious, correct? You said you were going to fix the problem, and then it hasn't been resolved. One thing I do need to mention is, and I heard, well, financial aid, it's always financial aid, financial aid, financial aid, financial aid. Just a reminder, when we go on campus and during my training sessions, and there's a couple of presidents here that have been to some of our training sessions, we always let them know that this is an institutional responsibility. It's not just financial aid. Some of the things we'll be talking about here as far as program review findings or audit findings may not be in the financial aid office. It may be in the registrar's office. It may be in the business office. But, of course, I always joke with financial aid. I was in financial aid for a long time. And I always joke with financial administrators saying, you know, there's 3 individuals that are on our team, on our system, the most important people. We've got the president, we got the CFO, and we have financial aid. And I know you all make a lot of money just like the president and the CFO. I joke, right? Because I was in financial aid, but that's our main contact with anything dealing with Title IV. But Title IV is not just a financial aid responsibility, it's an institutional responsibility. How many of you actually share, for example, when you have an audit or a program review, that report with all the various offices? Or does it just go to financial aid? Or do you share with other areas in your school? Do you all look at, or do you review your audit findings? Some do, some don't, and I understand that. So let's go over some of these program review findings. These are the bad guys. Ingrid's team, when they go to your school and do an actual review of your files, right? We're looking at Title IV. We're not looking at financial aid. And you should always welcome a program review. I get calls from schools, oh my God, they called me. I say, oh, who did? Well, they send this letter that they're coming to visit us. It's obviously not a good visit, right? Because they're calling me. They're coming to review our files. I said, that's great. You should welcome that. So if there's any deficiencies, they will let you know what those deficiencies are, and you'll have time to fix them. So here are some program review findings. And as we go to different institutions, some of these change. In other words, we have like the top 10. So we're seeing more student status inaccurate, untimely reporting. So this is where the school will report program information to our systems to track, for example, their student loan eligibility, their SULA, subsidized usage. Now, can somebody tell me who is responsible at your institution for doing this, for reporting enrollment at your school? Is it financial aid? Is it the registrar's office? It's the registrar's office, correct? So we have a finding in this area. Who should we go to? Registrar's office, correct? But who do we call? Financial aid. Because they're the 3 most important people that are on our systems, and we have their direct numbers. Verification violations, this is where the student filled out the FAFSA, for example. They need additional information to submit to the school, and this is something that is the sole responsibility of the financial aid office. Entrance counseling, exit counseling deficiencies are for student loans. Students, in order to receive their first disbursement on a student loan, of course, must go through entrance counseling. When a student leaves the institution, either they withdrew, or they graduate, or they go below half-time, then you must conduct an exit counseling. That typically falls in the financial aid office, or you may have an individual or individuals responsible for doing that. Return of Title IV calculation errors. Now, who is responsible for this? So this is when a student, for example, leaves before they're actually supposed to depart from the institution. Oh, I'm going crazy here. Okay. So say a student withdraws before they finish the term, the semester. And we have to determine how much aid was actually used, or how much you're able to keep, how much was earned, and how much was unearned. So the calculation typically will be in the financial aid office, but they must work with the business office because there may be money that needs to send back. Now, Dr. Boyd, Marcia mentioned faculty. Faculty is a big part of this return of Title IV calculations. Why? Because you need to determine the last date of attendance. In order to do that, who's going to make that determination? The faculty, correct? See where I'm going with this, that it's an institutional responsibility, it's not just financial aid. but we always point at financial aid because financial aid, once again, gets paid the more money at your institution, and everything goes to financial aid. So it's financial aid, and then either the president, carbon copy, financial aid, or the other way around. Student credit balance deficiencies. Now, this is where a student has overpaid their account. In other words, they receive more Title IV than what the institution is charging. So who is responsible for that? It's the business office. Remember financial aid awards, the business office disperses. Okay? And there is a time limit. Now, we visit a lot of institutions, and they say, well, we really couldn't send it out on the 14th day. You have 14 days because, well, you know, we didn't have enough money. Now, is that a good thing to say? Well, maybe to me, but don't tell Ingrid's team that. Right? There is a regulation. You've got to release those monies. As Marcia mentioned, the Title IV money that you received, it's the student's money. And if they've overpaid, in other words, there's a credit balance, and that money is owed to the student. Part of the cost of attendance component is not only direct cost, but also indirect cost. Transportation, maybe housing, childcare, maybe expenses. So that's their money, and they must have it. Crime awareness requirements not met. This is a big topic also, something that Ingrid's teams looked at very closely. And we talked about campus crime. So that's probably campus security will be responsible for that. There is an annual report that's due every year. It's October 1st. You must disseminate that. It's a reporting and a disclosure requirement, meaning you report that information to the department, but you also have to disclose that information to all your staff and all your students. Okay? Consumer information requirements not met. What is consumer information? Basic information about your institution, correct? What you all do, what your policies are in some cases. And there is, I believe the last time I checked, maybe 36, 37 pages front and back, small print, of just general consumer information requirements. And when I talk about institutional responsibility, we're talking about athletics, we're talking about campus crime, we're talking about FERPA. So it's an institutional responsibility. And this is one of those areas where it's very, how can I say it? It's not hard to manage, but things are always changing. And this is something that you need to look at very closely. When we do a visit to your school, and there's some schools that I visited here before, we go through those 37, 38 pages line by line, making sure that you have every item that's required. Why? Because when compliance goes in, they're going to look at every single item. Drug abuse prevention program requirements, that's also a requirement. And it would depend on what office is responsible for that. It would not be financial aid, probably. It would not be the business office. Counseling. Different schools have different areas where they would report this information. Inaccurate record keeping, once again, business office. And then, although it's at the end, lack of administrative capabilities. What does that mean when the Department of Education, if they go in and there's a program review and they say, this institution or this individual lacks administrative capability? I think Marcia mentioned, maybe several folks mentioned, that ultimately the information of that report or all the results of that program review, they go directly to who? The president of the institution. So when they say there's lack of administrative capability, it's letting you know you may not have those individuals on those positions, because remember it's institutional responsibility, that can manage the Title IV portfolio. And some of you manage millions of dollars as part of Title IV. So it's really a big responsibility. Okay, so that's program review. Let's look at some domestic school audit findings. These are the top 10 audit findings for 2018. Notice student status is in there, correct? It was also part of the program review. Student status reporting. And we do monitor that to make sure that schools are reporting this information, because the Department of Ed also has a deadline to report that information up to somebody else, correct? So that's very important. Repeat findings, failure to take corrective action. This is where something was cited in an audit. You did a corrective action plan saying, oh, we're not going to have any more verification violations. We're going to have training for these individuals. We're going to change the processes to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. And then come again next year, we have, once again, verification violations. Repeat findings are taken very seriously. And remember, all these audit findings, your yearly audit findings, the Department of Education gets a copy of that report. Okay, just like a accrediting body, also we get a copy of that report. So they're always in the know. They know and they check. So what happens if they see a repeat finding there? And sometimes I see repeat findings there for 3-4 years. So really something needs to change, correct, if you see that repeat finding more than twice. Return of Title IV funds made late or calculation errors. Notice how they separated those two. Interesting, right? One was errors in the calculation, and the other one was made late. Remember I mentioned that it's 14 days to send that money back? I'm sorry, this is return of Title IV, it's not credit balances. So you have 45 days to send that money back. So who is responsible for doing that? Now, the calculation errors may be, for example, the setup of your software to determine how much is earned and unearned. And then refunds made late may be in the business office. Verification violations, again, qualified auditor's opinion cited in an audit. They may cite that in your audit. Student credit balancing deficiencies. Once again, I see that again. So this is the 14 days where that money needs to be released to the students. So what office is responsible? Is the business office. Now, are any of you or anybody, for example, in the business office where somebody else looks at that and does the final approval? Or does the business office have the authority to issue those credit balances? You have somebody look at it? Okay. So just be careful with that. Sometimes the process takes longer than those 14 days. I went to a school where it went from financial aid. They went from the business office to financial aid. Why? I don't know. Then it went to the VP. Then it went into the auditor, the internal auditor. Then it went to the VP again. Then it went to the president. I found that rather strange, but that's the way they do things, right? So be careful with that. That's also a serious finding. Entrance and exit counselings, we already talked about. That's for student loans. Spillover payment or underpayment. This is probably due to incorrect cost of attendance in the financial aid office, where they've actually awarded or under-awarded funds for those students. And then G5 expenditures, untimely or incorrectly reported. That's in the business office. Okay, so all of these are in the business office. So, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot here, but yes, I will. Who has gone through a program review? Okay, just to let you know that we're in the know, so we know. And as far as repeat findings, when you get that report every year, do any of you take action when you see a repeat finding, or go back to financial aid and say, what have you done, or what wasn't done, or what didn't work, to make sure that doesn't happen again? Because we look at that. We, meaning Ingrid's team, the Department of Education, the compliance area, they look at that. And I would encourage you to share that audit and that program review, if you have a program review, with all your various offices, to include the business office, registrar's office, everybody that's involved in this Title IV process. And by us talking to you is now everybody pretty much is involved in this Title IV process to include the faculty. Now, she's not here. The president from Caribbean University in Puerto Rico, they had, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, she's not here. I'll ask permission later. Or also forgiveness later. But there was an issue where we had to go in, we went several times, and we actually had several sessions with the faculty to explain to them how this Title IV process works and how their input or their information made a difference as far as making a determination when you were going to send that money back, because sometimes we find that faculty, and I know, you may not know, grades are due at a certain date, correct? And we always hear this, well, they didn't turn it in, or they, it's summer, they went on vacation, they're not back until August. And this holds up this process for return of Title IV sometimes. Because it's not only those students that leave early or withdraw before they're supposed to, but we also have to look at those students that actually had no passing grades. And the institution must make a determination whether that F is either earned or unearned. In other words, they stopped attending or they actually went through the whole semester or that class and they earned that F. And who is responsible for letting you know? Is the faculty. So after several sessions with the faculty, they understood. I'm from Texas, so I went to a big school in Texas, and I did the same thing for faculty there. You know what they told me? Nobody ever told us this was important. Nobody ever told us. Had they told us, we would have done it. And I think those are some of the benefits of bringing in, for example, a team to look at your processes and involve all the staff in the institution, not just financial aid, so that everybody knows what their role is in this Title IV process. And that hopefully will eliminate or reduce the number of audit findings and or program review findings. Okay. You have Marcia's number? I'm the Hispanic Serving Institution Cluster Lead, and my number is 214-661-9455. And some folks here have my personal cell number too, and I don't mind that. But anytime you have a question as it relates to Title IV, if you do not want to call the participation team or the compliance team, you're more than welcome to call me or send me an email, and I'll be happy to respond. Okay, thank you.
So I'm back, all right. In the interest of time, my colleagues have told us that we have just a few minutes, so I'm going to cut a couple, or we're going to cut a couple slides out for today, just because we stand between you and lunch and a break, and we understand you've been here since 8 a.m. this morning, so I know it's pretty tough on you guys. And then we have another group right behind us, and we want to make sure that we are courteous to them. So I'm going to talk real quickly about this data that you see in front of you. And you guys, in your leadership roles, are always driven by data, probably this kind of data, high-level data, right? And what I want you to focus on is, Marcia said, we're going to talk about HCM, heightened cash monitoring status real quick, but I also want you to keep in mind that even though the numbers that you see there are close between minority-serving institutions and the general population on Title IV, there's always, always room for improvement. All right, so let's take a look at the first part of that slide, which talks about schools on heightened cash monitoring. How many, well, I won't ask that question, but let's talk about heightened cash monitoring. So heightened cash monitoring is a tool that we use in the department to allow for institutions to continue to participate in Title IV despite concerns that we have in compliance about your administrative capabilities. There's two levels of heightened cash monitoring, all right? Level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is less restrictive than level 2, but again, the goal is if you get on either one, level 1 or level 2, we try our hardest and we work with you guys to get you off of that. We don't want you to be restricted by that process. In general, you're placed on level 1 or level 2 because there's some compliance issues. For example, accreditation issues, late or missing annual financial statements or audits, outstanding liabilities, or denial of research, okay? If you want to talk about the distinction with those in some greater detail, we'll be happy. I'll talk to you afterwards, but again, in interest of saving some time, I want to go right through this. But one of the things I do want to say that is great, that we are all partners in this process, all right? Even though our team, the compliance team, is the team that you see after the fact of after seeing MCERT, I want you to know that you guys should be familiar with each of your school participation divisions in your region, right? We are there to help you. If you can't get a hold of Marcia or Raul, you need to reach out to them. They want to be proactive partners with you. That's the goal of this process. We don't want to always come in behind the fact. We want to be there. So reach out to them. If you have questions, if you have concerns that you need to talk to, or if Marcia says, hey, you need to reach out to your Dallas team, you need to reach out to your Atlanta team, go ahead and do that. Again, that's part of what they're there for. They're not there just to come out and do a program review. That's not what the purpose of their team is, all right? So with that said, we're going to skip down for a second, and we're going to go to one more activity. I think, is it one more? Okay. And I want you to, this is a little big one. We're not going to take 10 or 15 minutes because we don't have time, but we want you to think about the following questions, and we want you, another discussion amongst your team, your groups there. Let's talk about, now that you've gotten all that information from us, what a successful Title IV program means to you guys. So let's do, how many minutes you want to think? Maybe 2 or 3 minutes? 2 or 3 minutes. Last activity, is that right? Yep. Last activity for the day. Special prize involved. Okay, so anyway, it's me, it's on me. All right. So 2 or 3 minutes, take 2 or 3 minutes and talk about what a compliance program looks like, a good one. You've had all this information that we've given you today. So here you go, you got 2 minutes, all right? And then we want to hear from you. Thank you, or somebody put on 3 minutes. You want to wrap it up? Go ahead, you wrap it up.
No, you get them to answer your
Okay.
activity.
Okay. Okay.
Ingrid. She had a question. She wanted to know
Okay, let me, I'm sorry. Repeat the question. Okay. All right, let me repeat the question because the group in the back didn't hear it. Just talk about what a successful Title IV compliance program looks like, all right? A successful Title IV compliance program, you guys should know that. We've been through about an hour's worth of talking about all the good things that you should come up with. So just, we have another minute and 23 seconds, and then we'll. Yeah, it's got me a little timer on here. I think Joel did that from the back. Huh? Oh, wonderful. Oh, okay. We should have had him before. Oh, is that what it is? Okay. I should have been using him before. I know, right? All right, you guys, we're coming down to the last seconds. other signing. Nobody wants one.
I don't think they'll be called.
No. All right, we have 20 seconds, you guys. 20 seconds. All right, so let's put a break on it real quick. So I'm going to pick a table, and I'm going to pick the table way in the back, right there. Table, get your neighbors right there in the back. Yeah, you guys. Tell us what you guys came up with, because we haven't heard from you much today. What does a successful Title IV compliance program look like to you guys?
So it needs to have adequate staffing that are skilled and knowledgeable about financial aid, continued professional development for all staff, policies and procedures, systems that are operating and functioning and talking to each other.
Right.
That's important. Open and dialogue with the Department of Education in regards to anything that we may have as questions or concerns.
Good job.
And checks and balances, internal checks and balances and reporting to make sure that you stay abreast of what's happening so that you can address any concerns early on before it becomes a major conflict.
Great. Wonderful. They were paying attention today. All right, good job. So anybody come up with anything different or unique? Anybody come up with anything real quick? We got one more. Yep, you in the blue shirt. Your colleagues pointed you out.
So we noticed that we should have a financial aid process and procedure manual that's been updated.
Right, good.
That our succession plan should be clearly outlined and
great job.
communicated. That we have no findings.
Great.
That's a given. And that there's a clear communication of the joint responsibility of the review,
All right.
particularly with faculty, so that they understand the impact of the work that they are doing in the classrooms with the
Wonderful.
students.
All right. So thank you guys. So for what school are you with?
I'm at Spelman College. in
Spelman.
Atlanta,
All right,
Georgia.
Spelman, you get the prize of the day. Oh, I'm sorry. Spelman, here you go. You get your very own I Love Compliance hat. All right, so congratulations. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Marcia. All right, I will not become visiting you. No, I'm good. Okay. Marcia's going to wrap it up, and thank you guys for everything today.
Okay, so I started this session with giving you my phone number. Anybody missed it? Okay, I'm gonna give it to you again. My telephone number is area code 202-570-0139. 202-570-0139. In this, I gave you a lot of information today, but what I want you to come away with the most is that we're here to help. Don't be afraid to call us if you need us. Don't be afraid to call us to tell us some good things that you have going on. Dr. Bailey mentioned some good things that he has going on. We want to hear about the good things that's going on at your institutions as well, okay? I've visited many of your campuses, and I will continue to visit. But I want to make sure that you come away from this particular session knowing that we are here to help, both Ingrid's team as well as my team. We're here to help. But I do need you to be knowledgeable about the compliance process. I do need you to understand that we do have strict timelines. I do need you to know that you should keep the audit discussion as an agenda item in your business meetings. I do need you to know that reporting and having dashboards that indicate the information that you need to know from your financial aid, from your admission office, from your registrar and your business office, they need to be readily available. And then I also need you to know finally, when I call you, pick up the phone. And if you can't pick up the phone, call me back. Because I'm calling because there's something that I need to discuss with you, and oftentimes it's urgent. And I want to thank you for coming to Reno. We really appreciate you and all that you do. And again, please, if you need me, please feel free to call me at any time. Thank you, and have a great rest of this conference.